Hello everyone, I'm Bruffy1322 and welcome to the Stewards room, where we'll be taking a look at racing incidents submitted by you guys and trying to make a determination on who, if anyone, was at fault. There's a link in the description to submit your own clips, and feel free to check out the playlist link for more of these videos, specifically the first, which acts as a scene setter. Also keep an eye out for cards popping up on screen towards the end of each segment where you can vote on who you thought was at fault for each incident. So here's our first clip, and as always, I'm going to be just talking through it. We'll see it for the first time here, and then we'll scroll back, play it at slow speed, stuff like that, annotate the screen when needed. And it's basically, it looks like it's the final lap of a pretty long race. This is a 50-minute long race as it is. Goes up the inside here, and then they have coming together on the exit, and let's try and determine who was at fault for that. Now, most of the clips that we're going to see today are all pretty clear cut, honestly, and this one is just like that. We're starting pretty easily with this one. The fault here lies with the car that was overtaken, so the car that hit the back of the red car who's in focus. He actually does wait, as you can see there on the left. He waits there and gives the position back. They both lose, even more positions to someone else who manages to squeeze through. So let's take a look at the rules of racing document that I introduced in the first episode. And the specific part of this that we need to focus on is who owns the racing line, and pretty much disputes over the apex. That's what this is. That's what all of the clips in this video are going to be. About who owns the racing line at any one given moment when someone is attacking. And you can see here that there are basically three examples. When the attacker is more than halfway alongside, then a collision at the apex is the fault of the defender. If the attacker is less than halfway alongside, then the collision at the apex is the fault of the attacker. And if the attacker is approximately halfway alongside, a collision at the apex is there's equal fault there. So this obviously falls under clearly case A. The attacker was more than halfway along the inside of the car. He was well ahead. He'd pretty much claimed the corner, got the overtake done. And any collision at that point is the fault of the defender, because essentially what the attacker has done is taken the racing line away from the defender. So, we talked about the racing line as well in episode 1. He's taken the racing line away from the defender, and at that point he is free to continue that racing line as he sees fit. So if the defender is coming along and is pushed out wide, then if there's no space there, because he's behind, he then has to give way and back out. And that's obviously something that we didn't see here. That the red car goes up the inside. You can see he's much further up the inside. It's the move is done, and basically the defending car just doesn't back out. He should have realised that the move was done and it was over. He should have given up the position. To be fair to him, like I said, he does wait, and that's reasonable. He did the right thing by waiting. But yeah, the collision was the fault of the defender. The overtake was done more than halfway alongside at the apex. He had the right at that point to take the racing line, and the collision is the fault of the person who was being overtaken. So pretty clear cut for that one, but leave your thoughts either in the comments or on the poll. The cards will periodically pop up in the top right as well to get some feedback to see what you guys think. So, time for clip 2 now, and finally we're on a game that isn't GTA, and there are quite a lot of clips that we've got submitted that aren't on GTA, which is great to see. So, we're on F1 2018, 2017, I don't know, whichever one it is, they're all the same. And there's a decent run on the straight. The guy who we're looking at gets a decent run on the straight, puts him into a position to overtake into the first corner. Nicely done, takes the racing line as is totally allowed, as we've just been over. And then coming up to turn 2 of the track, we see the guy behind pretty much go for a very desperate lunge. The guy notices it who we're looking at, gets the move done, but obviously gets a better exit than the person who's just overtaken. And then as we run down to turn 3, tries to hold it out around the outside. Nothing really happens. And this was an interesting clip to me, because essentially this is textbook. All of this is textbook, and it's pointless me actually putting a poll on the screen for this one, because there was no incident. and nobody was at fault for anything. This was just textbook racing between two people. Now, some may say that it was a dive bomb by the blue car into turn 2, which, yes, it was, but he also got it stopped. You know, he got it stopped. There was no crash. Generally, a rule with dive bombing is that you shouldn't do it, but if you do it, if a crash happens, it's your fault, and you're not getting away with that. So he does come very quickly up the inside in a dive bomb fashion, but he gets it stopped. You know, he manages to stop it within the track limits, but it obviously compromises his exit for the corner. So he went for a move, and he got the overtake momentarily, but because the guy, the McLaren that we're looking at, was wise to it, essentially, he was able to let him do it and cut back and get the overspeed and on the following corner. So that was totally fine. A little bit on the edge of dive bomb, you know, but everybody got around it okay. And then turn 3, I think the question of the submission for this one was turn 3 justified insofar as, you know, he kind of just takes his racing line, and as we've just seen, from the first clip, as soon as you're ahead at the apex, you are free to take your racing line. So he's well ahead at the apex. He's up the inside. He has the position. He is now totally within his rights to continue the racing line. He's taken that racing line away from the blue car, and that's it. That's it. You know, just textbook racing. This one. There was no incident, no crashes. Nobody at fault for anything. I don't think, as the title of this video suggests, that the guy was trying to take him out at turn 2. I think it was literally he went for a dive bomb. Even if he was trying to take him out, it didn't work, and nothing came of it. So this is pretty much textbook overtaking. This is how you overtake, how you notice somebody coming up, steaming up the inside of you, let him do it, and then cut back on him like this. And then you get the inside for the next corner and run him out wide. You know, he was well within his rights. Once he's gotten up the inside like this, takes the racing line, run him out of space, because you need that space to carry your momentum through, and you have the rights to the racing line at that point. So textbook, nobody at fault, nothing wrong, no incidents. That's how it should be done in my eyes. And I just wanted to point out, since we're on the subject of dive bombs, the piece that is said about that in the rules of racing section. Today, it is generally accepted that the attacker must be at least halfway alongside the defender when they reach the apex to have reasonable claim to this piece of the track, talking about the apex of the corner. Moreover, the attacker should not have achieved this position by carrying too much speed to make the corner. This method is called dive bombing. Again, if you dive bomb and a crash happens, that is entirely your fault. If you go for a late lunge, you are wholly to blame. You can take the risk and it might pay off, and if it does work, you're not going to get penalised for it, but it is a big risk, because chances are it's going to always, most of the time, it's going to end up in a crash, and that crash will be entirely your fault for going for a late lunge like that in the first place. So our third clip, back on F1 2017 again, I think it is, and this is an interesting one because it's kind of on that grey area of what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable. So it goes up the inside here, as you can see, ends up getting turned around. And for me, this was never really on. Now, I'm on the, this is like Xbox's clip submission thing. Oh, there we go. There's the playback rates. So we can slow it down. So, you know, this is exactly what I've just been talking about with a dive bomb. This is very much a late lunge into a corner where really you're not gonna be getting an overtake done there. It's not it's difficult to kind of explain it in a way that makes sense, because, you know, when you're looking at it, you can just think, oh, he went for the inside. He was pretty much halfway alongside at the apex of the corner, and he should then have been allowed to take that space. But you can see the closing speed here, how quickly he closes in. And what we've just read about dive bombing says that you shouldn't have gotten to that position of being more than halfway alongside at the apex of a corner by carrying too much speed into the corner. And that's exactly what is done here. and you can even see, you know, that the line that is taken by the Renault here, well, in fact, it's more like this. He's aiming towards the apex, and if we just scroll it back a little bit, you can see the direction change that the Renault does as you get towards the apex. So this is the normal racing line that the McLaren is on just ahead. And then this direction change again over to the right, more and more over to the right to try and get into the apex of the corner quicker. But it wasn't really on. That wasn't really an overtake that was on, you know. It was a dive bomb. He came off worse for it because he carried too much speed into the corner, and he can't really complain about what happened. Luckily, the McLaren wasn't affected by that and was able to continue, but if he had, it would have been the fault of the Renault, because look at this closing speed. And you've got to think, is he going to make this corner? Is the Renault going to actually get around this corner without the aid of hitting into the side of the McLaren? And you would have, without this hit, he would have been over here and then maybe luckily not gone completely off the track and continued along there, but he would have still lost a lot of time. So you can't dive down the inside of someone and then claim that you were just you were more than halfway alongside, so you deserve the rights to that corner. No, you've got to do it more gradual than that. You've got to actually show to yourself, and you know, when you got to put yourself into the McLaren's perspective as well. How is he going to know at this point? How is he going to be able to do anything other than take his normal racing line? Because he comes out of nowhere. He's already started, you know, turning into the corner at this point, and he's still nowhere. You can't react to that and going, and let's actually put it on at full speed, because it makes it seem easier at you know, quarter speed. But you can't react to someone coming up the inside like that in a tight corner like that as well. He's already on his racing line. He has the racing line. He takes it, and from my perspective, that was a move that wasn't really on, and it was kind of a desperate lunge, a dive bomb that honestly didn't pay off. You know, he's well within his rights to try something like that, but you can't then say that it wasn't your fault for putting yourself in that position in the first place, and you're the one who comes off worse for it. So that's my take on it. Maybe that's probably the most controversial clip that we've had so far in the series. But like I said, there'll be a poll in the top right hand corner in a card. Who do you think was at fault for this one? Racing incident? I guess it would fall into the realms of a racing incident because the person who was at fault ended up being the one, or in my eyes, the person who was at fault ended up being the one who suffered from it. But I'll just say, you know, who was at fault, or is it just one of those things? Vote on the card in the top right. You'll see it pop up about now. But yeah, an interesting one, that one, and kind of right on the edge of what's allowable and what isn't when it comes to trying to overtake up the inside. And our final clip on GT Sport. It's very, very similar to the first clip, honestly. Again, it's a little bit naughty with the hitting in the back there. And this one, again, this one's a little bit more controversial, you could say. Or a little bit more in a grey area. So the general rule is that if you've taken that racing line, as I mentioned when we were talking about the first clip, if you've gone up the inside of someone and you've taken that racing line, then you are free to take your racing line, and the person who was defending should back out of that. And that's obviously not what happened. It's very, very similar to the first clip that we saw. There is a slight difference here insofar as there is a little bit of argy-bargy, you know, he's hitting him in the back here multiple times, which is a little bit naughty, but it's not necessarily, you know, going to be majorly penalised, but it's a bit naughty. But there's also a wall right there. And really, the black and white car has no need to continue going up like this, but he is also within his rights to do it. You know, that's kind of the thing that, especially that I've learned a lot from karting. as soon as you've lost that racing line, you just need to back out of it, because someone will run you out of road. And as soon as you don't run someone out of road in that situation, you're going to get mugged when someone does it to you. You know, racing is, you know, it's hard. So the black and white car doesn't have to push the purple car out wide like that. But he's also within his rights to do it, because he's taken the racing line. He's ahead, as you can see. He's much further ahead at this point. He's got the move done, and he has the right to the racing line, so he can take the racing line. And really, the purple car at this point should have backed out of it a little bit, and everyone would have continued on as normal. In fact, really everybody did. It was a minor hit, to be honest. And they all continued as normal, but you know, I guess this would be just a racing incident. You know, there's nobody really suffered from this. The hitting in the back, if anything, is the worst part of this, and I would certainly be aggrieved at the guy in the black and white car for doing that in the first place. But it's not really something that, you know, you see that kind of thing all the time in you know, closed wheel racing. It's just the sort of thing that happens when you've got a more robust car. And I can obviously understand it happening on something like Gran Turismo, where the cars have no damage at all, basically. So it was a good move initially, you know, to get up there in the first place. You know, it was a good move up the inside. And then what the purple car seems to do is pretty standard when you make a move up the inside, is try to stop a person cutting back on you, and basically sort of braking a little bit more, slowing it down a little bit more on the apex so that they can't get underneath you. But then the black and white car pushed him in the back because of that. But again, it was a bit of sort of 6 and 2 3 sort of thing, and we'll have a look at the document for about this specific thing as well. So this is basically the perfect, you know, encapsulation of what we've just seen, the switchback. So on hairpin corners, an alternative method of overtaking is available, sometimes called the switchback. If a defending driver takes the inside line, the attacking driver can try to take a wider entry. This results in a later apex, a straighter path under acceleration, therefore a faster exit. You know, you can see it right here on the diagram. We all know what a cutback, a switchback is. To deal with this threat, defenders often choose to linger at the apex by delaying their application of throttle on exit. Because the attacker must pass over the defender's line, this creates an obstruction. Now the attacker is unable to accelerate out of the corner until the defender has done the same, undermining the attacker's advantage on exit. So basically, what we've just seen, you know, you come up the inside, and then as you get to this point, you slow it down so that the person who tries to do a cutback on you can't get that cutback done, and then you accelerate out the corner and they can't accelerate out of the corner until you've done it. And that's basically what we just saw. Now, as it says here, lingering on the apex is considered an acceptable defense, but the amount of lingering that is allowable is not well defined. Clearly, a driver cannot come to a complete halt, but beyond that, there are no clear guidelines. And I think that is kind of a perfectly showing, this is the sort of thing that we're seeing from this incident here. So, you know, the purple car comes up the inside, then he does decide to linger on the apex, which is perfectly allowable. But by doing that, you're obviously putting yourself into a situation where you're going slower than you otherwise would be, so you're catching the driver behind out a little bit. So he can't also be expected to then not bump into the back of you if you're going slower than you otherwise should be, to stop him from hitting you. So for me, this whole thing was just a racing incident. It's one of those things. Nobody had any major incidents. Nobody lost any positions. It was just rough racing, but it was rough and hard racing. But for the most part, it was pretty fair. And any incident in terms of hitting or you know, the taking the racing line and having a slight coming together on the exit would just go down as a racing incident for me. But again, you guys let me know what you think in the comments or on the card in the top right hand corner of the screen. So that's pretty much it for this episode. Let me know your thoughts down below and in the polls on the video itself. You can find in the video description all info and links that you may need to submit your own clips, and if you'd like to support me you can do so on Patreon by becoming a YouTube member or simply subscribing and liking the video. Thank you all so much for watching, I really do appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.